And that's the lie it tells you to keep you safe. It frames the risk as, I might look foolish, but it ignores the much bigger risk, which is that you'll never actually exist in the world as a creator because you're too busy polishing a mirror that doesn't even have a reflection yet.
The same thing happened to me. I mean, like right now, I have a script in front of me, but I'm trying my best to speak off the cuff because when I read the script word for word, I sound like a fucking robot.
Hi, what's up?
In this video, I want to look at 5 psychological traps that can hold people back. More importantly, I want to look at why your mind falls into each trap and how it makes the problem worse, and what you can do instead. Most people don't stay stuck because they're incapable of changing. They stay stuck because their mind keeps turning discomfort, uncertainty, and past behavior into reasons not to move forward.
I love the angle of the mental loop. It shifts the focus from a lack of ability to a glitch in the processing. Which 5 traps are we diving into?
The first one is you treat discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. You feel anxious, uncertain, embarrassed, overwhelmed, or unmotivated, and conclude that you should stop or avoid the situation. Instead of seeing discomfort as part of the process, you see it as a warning sign that you're making a mistake.
And that's the trick, right? The mind frames a temporary feeling as a permanent red light, making you feel like you're failing when you're actually just stretching.
Do you know why that happens?
It's basically an evolutionary leftover. Our brains are wired for survival, not necessarily for happiness or growth. Back in the day, discomfort usually meant a predator was nearby or you were about to eat something poisonous. So the mind learned to associate that feeling with an immediate need to escape. Now we're applying that same ancient survival software to things like public speaking or starting a business. And the brain just can't tell the difference between a social risk and a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly. And to touch on that public speaking example you mentioned, imagine like you giving a presentation and you're really anxious about it. At the last minute, you call in sick and the anxiety disappears. And because you feel better, you start thinking that avoiding the presentation was the right idea. And because stopping or giving up does make the problem or discomfort go away, it seems like you've made the right decision.
That's the trap snapping shut. The brain gets a little hit of relief, which it mistakes for a reward. Basically tells you, see, avoiding that was the winning move, and now you've just accidentally trained your mind to be more afraid next time.
Exactly. You're training your mind that avoidance is an effective way to reduce discomfort. So the next time you think about the situation, it might feel even more threatening. You're training your mind to believe that avoidance is safer than facing the challenge. And it just makes things worse and worse. Every time you avoid something because it feels uncomfortable, you train your mind to believe that discomfort is dangerous. And over time,
Your world starts to shrink. The things you're willing to do get smaller and smaller because you've convinced your brain that the only way to be safe is to stay in the comfort zone.
that and it also makes the original problem even worse. For example, an unanswered message becomes more awkward the next time you try to send it, or the job that you wanted to apply for may already be filled, or a neglected car repair could turn into a much more expensive job to fix. Now you're not just facing the original problem, you're facing the problem plus accumulated anxiety, urgency, guilt, and the expectation that it will be difficult.
It's like interest on a loan you didn't even want to take out. You start with a simple task, but by the time you actually face it, it's morphed into this towering mountain of stress. The task itself hasn't changed, but the mental baggage you've added to it has made it feel impossible.
What do you think we should do instead?
We have to change the internal narrative about what that discomfort actually means. Instead of seeing it as a red light telling you to stop, we need to frame it as a green light or maybe a work light that signals you're exactly where you need to be to grow. The goal isn't to make the anxiety vanish, but to move forward while it's still there, proving to the brain that the discomfort isn't actually dangerous.
Exactly. I agree. I think you need to see the discomfort as just another experience. It's not good or bad. It's just something different that you're feeling. And you can feel that without needing to try and escape it. The goal isn't to stop needing to be uncomfortable in order to act. You just act. You just make that next move, regardless of how uncomfortable you feel.
You're basically telling your brain, I hear you, but we're doing this anyway.
Let's move on to the second trap. The second one is you wait until you feel ready before taking action. You tell yourself you'll begin once you feel confident, motivated, calm, inspired, or certain. But those feelings may never come until you actually do start. The only way to build confidence is actually taking the first step.
It's the ultimate paradox. We treat confidence like a prerequisite, something you need to have before you start, when it's actually the reward you get after you've already done the hard part. Waiting to feel ready is basically just a polite way of procrastinating.
I think it happens because your mind wants certainty before it exposes you to the possibility of failure. Because feeling ready seems like proof that you'll know what to do or how to perform. So you keep waiting for your body to tell you it's safe. But that feeling you're waiting for will never come until you feel safety through action. Imagine you want to start exercising or apply for a job or create a YouTube channel. You keep waiting for the day when you feel motivated and confident. But because you never take actual steps, you never gain the experience that would make you feel more capable. The confidence you're waiting for depends on the actions you keep putting off.
It's like trying to get a paycheck before you've even started the job. You're stuck in this loop where you're asking for the result of the work without actually doing the work. The mind treats feeling ready as a safety net, but the only real safety net is the evidence that you've already survived the first few steps.
And you know, avoidance is going to make things worse. What do you think is going to happen if you keep avoiding things you need to do?
You end up in a state of permanent preparation. You'll spend all your time researching, planning, and getting ready, but you never actually launch. The tragedy is that the longer you wait, the bigger the mountain becomes in your head, and the more ready you feel you need to be just to survive the climb. You're essentially optimizing for a level of certainty that doesn't exist.
So, what should you do instead?
You have to flip the script on how you view the starting line. Instead of waiting for the feeling to lead the way, you make the action the leader. You accept that you're going to start while feeling completely unready, terrified, or uninspired. The feeling doesn't get a vote in whether or not the work gets done.
What would you tell people if they were having this problem?
I'd tell them that ready is a myth, that tell them that the version of themselves that feels ready doesn't exist yet because that person is created by the very actions they're avoiding.
So, you're saying basically make the first step, even if it's small. Just you're going to have to begin, even if you don't feel confident, motivated, or ready. You're going to have to make that first step because I think making that first step is going to make you more comfortable with the process.
Exactly. Uh, the first step is essentially a proof of concept for your brain. Once you actually do the thing, the monster in your head shrinks because you've replaced a scary imaginary scenario with a real, manageable experience.
Exactly. You're basically teaching your brain that it's safe to do whatever it is you're avoiding.
Exactly. You're replacing that internal alarm with actual evidence. The brain finally stops speculating about how bad it'll be because it can see that you're still standing.
Let's move on to the third one. You remain stuck because you reject imperfection. Basically, you you're not going to post that first YouTube video because it's not as perfect as you would like it to be. Basically, your own standards of perfection are holding you back from making the first step.
That's the perfectionism paradox. You're basically holding yourself hostage with a standard that doesn't even exist in the real world. The mind frames perfection as the only acceptable entry point, but in reality, it's just a high end shield used to protect you from the vulnerability of being a beginner.
Yeah, it doesn't want you to look stupid or it doesn't want you to look like a fool in public, basically. So it's telling you whatever you produce has to be perfect.
And that's the lie it tells you to keep you safe. It frames the risk as I might look foolish, but it ignores the much bigger risk, which is that you'll never actually exist in the world as a creator because you're too busy polishing a mirror that doesn't even have a reflection yet.
The same thing happened to me. I mean, I usually like right now I have a script in front of me and I have a general idea of what I'm going to say, but I'm trying my best to speak off the cuff and not read the script word for word because when I noticed when I read the script word for word, I sound like a fucking robot. So my presentation doesn't have to be perfect. I guess what I'm saying is the only way I'm going to get better at presenting these ideas is to present them in my own words instead of reading the script I had written in advance. I mean, speak what I'm feeling in the moment instead of speaking the words that I prepared to perfection, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. When you read a script, word for word, you're prioritizing the perfect text over the actual human connection. By speaking off the cuff, you're choosing authenticity over a polished facade. And that's exactly where the energy is.
How does putting off doing something for the sake of perfection make things worse?
It turns a creative project into a psychological prison. The longer you wait for it to be perfect, the more weight you put on the final result. It stops being a first attempt and starts being the big launch that can't possibly fail. You've essentially raised the stakes so high that the pressure becomes paralyzing, and suddenly the fear of not being perfect is even bigger than the original fear of starting.
And because your standard seems impossible to meet, you keep putting it off.
Exactly. You've set the bar so high that you've essentially disqualified yourself from ever starting. It becomes a loop of not quite there yet, and you end up stuck in the gap between where you are and this imaginary ideal that doesn't actually exist.
So what should you do instead?
You have to embrace the ugly first draft phase. You've got to give yourself permission to be mediocre at first. The goal shouldn't be to create something perfect. The goal should be to create something that exists. Once it exists, you have something real to work with, something you can actually edit and improve. You can't polish a ghost, but you can definitely polish a rough first attempt.
Let's move on to the next one. You treat your thoughts as predictions. Your mind says things like, I will fail, or they won't hire me, or I can't do this. And you think those are reliable predictions about what's going to happen. Instead of seeing them as one possible outcome, you behave as if your mind already knows it will happen.
That's a huge one. It's basically a cognitive shortcut gone wrong. The mind hates uncertainty, so it creates a certain negative outcome just to feel like it's prepared. You end up living through the failure 1,000 times in your head before you've even stepped foot in the room, and by the time you actually act, you're already exhausted from a battle that never even happened.
Why do you think this happens?
It's that survival instinct again, trying to protect you from a blow it thinks is inevitable. Your brain thinks that by predicting the worst case scenario, it's effectively simulating the danger so you won't be blindsided. It's trying to trade the pain of uncertainty for the comfort of a known negative outcome. But in doing that, it accidentally convinces you that the failure is already a fact rather than just a guess.
Can I give an example?
Sure. Imagine someone who's terrified of rejection, so they want to ask a coworker out on a date. Their mind immediately jumps to they're going to say no and it'll be awkward for the rest of the year. Instead of seeing that as just one possible scenario, they treat it as a factual weather report. They don't even ask, and they spend the next 6 months avoiding that person, effectively creating the very awkwardness they were trying to prevent.
Because you basically already think you've been rejected. It already happened in your mind. But that's not what actually happened. It's just something you made up in your head.
Right. It's a total hallucination. You've basically fired the starting gun on a race that hasn't even begun, and then you're upset that you've already lost. The mind mistakes its own imagination for a crystal ball, and you end up reacting to a ghost instead of the actual person standing in front of you.
So, how does believing the mind without questioning it make things worse?
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you treat a negative prediction as a fact, you stop acting like someone who can succeed and start acting like someone who's already failed. Your body language shifts, your energy drops, and you stop looking for opportunities because you've already decided they aren't there. You basically manifest the failure by refusing to give the actual reality a chance to happen.
Exactly. You don't apply for the job because why would you? You're not going to get it. You don't ask the person out because you know she's going to reject you. You don't post that YouTube video because you already know people are going to laugh at you. And then you never find out whether you would have gotten the job or gotten the girl or whether that video would have led to something.
Right. You've essentially pre-rejected yourself. You've decided the outcome without ever giving the universe a chance to surprise you. The tragedy is that you're not actually protecting yourself from failure. You're just guaranteeing it by default.
And you never gain the experience or evidence that your mind was wrong. So instead, we should treat our thoughts as possibilities rather than predictions. Instead of assuming they're not going to hire me, you might want to say to yourself, they may not hire me, but I've got nothing to lose. Instead of assuming she's going to reject me outright, be open to the possibility. Maybe she will reject you, but what if she says yes? Instead of assuming people are going to laugh at my video, say, what if people like it? Or, maybe they will laugh at it. Maybe they won't like it, but what if they do?
Right. You're basically opening the door to a different set of possibilities. You stop treating your mind like a judge and start treating it like a brainstorm. Instead of one inevitable disaster, you have a spectrum of outcomes. And suddenly the risk feels manageable because the potential reward is actually back on the table.
Let's move on to the next one. You turn repeated behaviors into a fixed identity. Instead of describing what you've been doing, you define yourself by it. For example, I haven't been able to lose weight becomes I just don't have self control. I've been rejected a half dozen times becomes I'm undesirable. I get nervous around people becomes I'm just socially awkward. Once you turn a pattern into an identity, it starts to feel permanent. You stop seeing the behavior as something you do and start seeing it as something that you are.
And that's the heaviest trap of them all. Because once you label yourself as socially awkward or undesirable, you stop looking for solutions and start looking for evidence to support the label. It's no longer a habit you can change, it's a cage you've locked yourself in.
Why do you think it happens? Why do you think we do it?
I think it's a subconscious attempt to find stability in the chaos. The mind hates the feeling of being a work in progress because that implies uncertainty and a constant need for effort. By turning a struggle into an identity, the brain basically says, well, this is just who I am. It's a weird kind of comfort. It's easier to accept a permanent flaw than to deal with the ongoing frustration of trying and failing to change it. It trades the possibility of growth for the certainty of a label.
Because that label creates a sense of comfort, and trying to step outside of that is not comfortable.
Exactly. It's a psychological safety blanket. If you're just a socially awkward person, then every failure is just a symptom of your nature, not a lack of effort. It protects you from the pain of trying and missing, but it also kills any chance of actually evolving.
How does the act of identifying yourself with a certain behavior make things worse?
It turns a behavior into a law. Once it's an identity, you stop asking, how can I fix this? And start saying, this is just how I am. You stop experimenting with new ways of being because you've convinced yourself that you're fundamentally wired a certain way. Basically gives you a permanent excuse to stay stuck because why fight your own nature, right?
Right?
Exactly. You stop being the architect of your life and start being the prisoner of a label you probably gave yourself years ago. It turns a solvable problem into an changeable fact. So, how do we break that cage? How do we shift from this is who I am back to this is just something I've been doing?
What if you describe the behavior as specifically as you can without turning it into a definition of who you are? Like, instead of saying, I'm lazy, maybe you could say, I've been avoiding this task. Or instead of saying, I'm socially awkward, you could say, I become self conscious around unfamiliar people.
That's the magic shift right there. You're moving from a global identity to a specific observation. When you say I'm lazy, it's a life sentence. But when you say I've been avoiding this task, it's just a data point. It transforms a permanent character flaw into a temporary behavior that can actually be managed and changed.
Yeah, you can analyze that specific behavior. You can ask things like, when does it happen? Or what are you feeling in that moment? Or what are you trying to avoid? Or what would make a different response easier?
Exactly. You've turned a dead end into a map. By treating it as a behavior instead of a birthright, you finally give yourself permission to actually solve the problem. You're not fighting your nature anymore, you're just adjusting a habit.
Do all five of these traps have something in common?
They absolutely do. At their core, all five are just different flavors of identification, whether it's identifying a feeling as a warning sign, a lack of confidence as a barrier, or a habit as a personality trait. The mind is just fusing a temporary experience with your permanent identity. It's that same glitch we talked about at the start, treating a mental event as an objective fact instead of just a signal.
Right. You don't have to believe every thought that pops into your head.
And that's the liberation, right? The moment you realize you're the observer of the thoughts and not the thoughts themselves, the traps just lose their grip. You go from being the passenger in a car driven by these glitches to actually being the one with your hands on the wheel.
Do you have any final thoughts or questions for the audience?
I think I do. I'd ask them, which of these traps have you been using as a shield to keep yourself safe from your own potential? Because once you name the trap, it stops being a wall and starts being a door.
Thank you, Maya. I think we'll end that here.
Anytime. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one lands. Catch you later.